Howdy, folks. I'm Mark, and today I am joined by Kurt Weisheit. Kurt, thanks for joining me for this short talk about video games.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Good to have you back. Glad you could make it back here.
Mhm.
So, you are listening to Quick Play, so let's get right into it. So, games have gotten a little talky. A lot of them have always kind of been wordy. Some people are into that. Some people like the story. Some people like just a lot of dialogue, but some people kind of skip all that. And I feel like the amount of words in a game has never really been something that I have really paid attention to. But it seems like more and more there are games that are notable, or even just looking back, some games are notable for being like wordless or very word limited. But Kurt, to get us started on this journey, what are some of your favorite wordless or even like word-lite games?
Yeah, I think honestly, what I like is a lot of early video games don't have that many words. And so like the really classic video games, I feel like Nintendo games are really good at this. Like Mario, there's somewhere like the intro scene is just like Bowser kidnapping Peach and then like something weird happens and there's no dialogue at all. That's fun. Like, the 2D Metroid games, like all of these, like they don't have a lot of words. And if, you could be playing in any language and you'd still get the same experience, which I think is cool. So that definitely is the first thing that comes to mind is like kind of the older games, like a lot of platformers. It's kind of a universal experience.
Yeah. I was even thinking about like kind of more arcade games where just it doesn't want to bog you down, like especially if you're in the arcade itself, like it doesn't want to stop you to like read this dialogue box for story. Or sometimes that's like playing on the screen as a way to tempt you to play the game, but it just jumps you right into the action. Like even more significantly is like very little text for a tutorial. It's just throw you in, figure it out. Good luck.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything else comes to mind, like more modern games that you have in mind?
Yeah, I think some that like are completely wordless that are kind of like, I guess, cult classics for like being, more artistic with their approach. Journey is a classic one. It's just like kind of this dreamlike experience from start to finish. Cocoon is like an indie game that I played recently where it's really interesting. Like there's basically no like UI. You're just like wandering around and you kind of just like figure it out. So
nice. I started playing Cocoon. I have played Journey, and that was great. I actually started playing Cocoon, and like, you mentioned Cocoon as we were talking kind of about the episode, and like I didn't even realize, that game didn't have any words. Like, it's cool to have just these kind of puzzle games that like can teach you without words themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's definitely something to the simplicity where, you have to be thinking about it. Like I remember I played Cocoon and I actually I was just by myself, but I ended up like kind of talking out loud my thought process, which I never do. It was really interesting. And I'm like, okay, like what if I do this? Like my mind was like actually filling in and like, I guess I'm used to at least a few words. So that was really bizarre. Like I never have the urge to, like just speak out loud my thought process, but that was a really interesting experience with that.
That's such a fascinating way to think about like the game, kind of inviting you to participate in that way. And I know that's kind of like a personal thing too. That's a cool thing to realize and recognize that like, I'm filling in all the blank space the game is giving me.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure.
A few that I've thought of, which both of these are kind of cheating because they're not totally wordless, but I thought of Tunic, which has like a lot of words, but it's like in a made up language. And that's kind of part of it is you kind of fill in what all these mechanics are. And like like you have this fictional digital manual that you're filling in. That's just in kind of this nonsense language. And it's an interesting, it like plays on the fact that it's like wordless as part of the puzzle of figuring it out. But another one I thought of are kind of the Portal games, which is, again, it's a very talky game. GLaDOS is talking to you the entire time, but if you I realized if you muted the game and didn't have captions, you could still play the game. Like everything that you need to figure out the puzzles is like in diagrams or in just like level design. It's like everything except for the story context around it, everything is mostly wordless, like at least in gameplay.
Yeah, that's interesting. And definitely GLaDOS is not helping you solve it.
Yes, true. If anything, you might be a little faster if you like turned her off or turned off the sound or yeah. But what do you think in these games where there's wordlessness? What does that offer that's unique?
I think one thing, and this is the case with word-lite games. I'm thinking of we mentioned Metroid, but Metroid Prime. I know that's like one of our favorite games. Like that is, I think the environmental storytelling that kind of can take a front seat when there's not that many words. I know with Metroid Prime, I really like it because you have all the like emotion and kind of first impression that's like there's not that many words, and then there's all the lore that you can like dig into, but you don't have to do
right.
And so I love stuff like that. Even Dark Souls from software games, where like there's NPCs and dialogue, but like Elden Ring is like there's all these memes going around about how like completely obtuse all the NPC quest lines are, and it's so true because like you'll piss off a like NPC and you have no idea why. But diving into that is a whole nother thing. But like
nice,
that's basically wordless, and it lets like all the storytelling from the environment happen. And so I think a lot of these games that have like beautiful scenery and you kind of have to like piece things together. I think that's super fun. And I think it's better than like some like companion like talking in your ear about like stuff that happened that like kind of takes you out of it.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like the kind of the wordlessness is like even best in puzzles where it's like part of the puzzle is just figuring out like what am I doing here? Like what's going on? Like what's not only what is the solution to the problem, but like figuring out what is the problem in the puzzle itself. Like what is what's the objective, less so of how do I achieve the objective. I think it's also like you mentioned this in talking about like old school Nintendo games. A lot of these kind of wordless games require being a little more clever on tutorials. Like there's, I mean, Mario Brothers World 1-1 gets talked about all the time about how like hitting the block with the mushroom kind of forces you into the mushroom, and it has just kind of the whole World 1-1's meant to just teach you all the mechanics of the game without, well, granted, the words World 1-1 shows up at the beginning, but that doesn't really count. But like it teaches you without actually telling you anything in a sense.
Yeah. And I feel like I don't know much about game design, but I feel like that would be much more difficult to design a game where you don't need a tutorial. You don't need, you're so confident in your puzzle or design that you don't feel like you need a lot of text or, companion to tell you hints.
Right.
So that's got to be super difficult, but I think the game design even that can take a focus and that really shines there.
Yeah. 100%. I think to a little asterisk on that too, a lot of these older games had manuals that were like essential to the experience. But I think Mario Brothers is still a really key example there, and Metroid also still a key example. So we talked about how like it's probably pretty stinking hard to make these games like this. Why else do you think that we just don't see wordless games that much anymore?
I think potentially you might try to set a game apart by using a different dialogue or kind of explain things. I think just the difficulty of wordlessness is another thing. I think you have to be again so confident in the experience that you're showing people. It's easy to to have someone say rather than show. And I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also, I'm thinking about too, is as tech has developed, there's just been more potential for complex stories, and that like words have been the main way we tell stories for like since the beginning. So it makes sense that like games would often use words. Like you can't tell a story like The Last of Us without words, and I roll my eyes. I use The Last of Us because that's the example everyone uses. But it with games being like this more action oriented story medium in a sense, I think it's all the more distinct and powerful when these games are wordless, even though it's now that like more than ever we can fit a ton of words and fit a ton of like spoken dialogue in the games because they're just before there just wasn't enough space. I think it's been tempting to like make it more like a movie in a sense. But I think the more that games can like let action and environmental storytelling, like you were mentioning, be the storytelling avenue, I think that really takes advantage of the medium.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the like focus on everything else, if there's no dialogue, like it does force the game designers to think about other things, like music, what's going to happen, like what do we want people to feel as they enter this area, all of that stuff. I think when you take away words, like you have to think about like what's left. And I think that's that adds a lot when you can have music swell at certain points or like whatever or like that.
Yeah, Journey's a great example of that, where music is so powerful in that game. Man. Well, our time is short, but before we go, Kurt, have you ever bought or played a game just because it was wordless, or at least that being like a major factor in you playing it?
Yeah, I guess indirectly Journey, just because, it's so famous for what it is. That would probably be the closest thing. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I kind of have like a non-answer to this because I haven't actually played this game, but the game Blanc is kind of what is the first one. It's like a black and white. There's a fox and I think a deer. It's a really cute game that looks like it'll be really sad. But that was the first time I heard or really noticed a game being marketed as like there are no words in this game.
Oh, that was a selling point for it.
Yes. Yeah. And that was like, that really caught my attention about the game. I just actually haven't bought it yet. So maybe I will eventually. But it's on my radar because of that. Well, as we wrap up here, we got to know one name, one game. What are you playing?
Yeah, I just finished playing the Elden Ring DLC.
Nice.
Erdtree. So that was a ton of fun. I haven't played for a few years, so getting back into that is great.
Yes. Got a good Elden Ring shout out on our episode talking about, not as much words in that, or just silly words that don't mean anything.
For sure.
I have jumped into I can't talk. I jumped into some Splatoon 3.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Well, Kurt, thank you again for joining me. Where else are you on the internet? Or are you on the internet?
A little bit. I don't think I'm doing anything on the internet, so
that's fine. Yeah. That's for the best.
I might be back here. So
I'm sure. Well, thank you all for listening in. You can follow us on major podcasting services. You can find us on the proper socials at Quick Play Pod and let us know what is your favorite wordless or word-lite game. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks.